Hill-Stead Museum in Farmington is an important cultural and recreational resource within easy reach of all the cities and towns in central Connecticut. Hill-Stead Museum is a place where art and nature flourish together, just as the family that designed this estate intended. Hill-Stead is a colonial revival house built at the turn of the 20th century and maintained just as it was when the family that built it lived here. Hill-Stead is their outstanding art collection. Hill-Stead is 150 acres of fields, trails, and scenic views. Hill-Stead is May Market and other seasonal events. Hill-Stead is also a beautiful sunken garden, the site of the annual Sunken Garden Poetry Festival. This program and the ones that follow are an invitation to attend this summer's series of poetry and music events.
I thought I would start by reading from Citizen. The pieces in Citizen, many of them were gathered by talking to people. I was curious what kinds of experiences my friends were having, many of them African American. So I called them up and I said, tell me a moment when you were doing something ordinary and racism derailed. The new therapist specializes in trauma counseling. You have only ever spoken on the phone. Her house has a side gate that leads to a back entrance she uses for patients. You walk down a path bordered on both sides with deer grass and rosemary to the gate, which turns out to be locked. At the front door, the bell is a small round disc that you press firmly. When the door finally opens, the woman standing there yells at the top of her lungs, "Get away from my house, what are you doing in my yard?" It's as if a wounded Doberman pinscher or a German shepherd has gained the power of speech. And though you back up a few steps, you manage to tell her you have an appointment. "You have an appointment," she spits back. Then she pauses. Everything pauses. "Oh," she says, followed by, "Oh, yes, that's right. I'm sorry. I am so, so sorry." My friend she lives in Northern California, and she told me this story, and I really found it unbelievable because of the reputation we have. I don't want to sort of locate her in her specific institution, but she lives in Berkeley. And and you think they have a reputation of a kind of higher consciousness out there. I don't know. I asked her what she did after that happened, and she said, I went to the appointment. And I was incredulous, but then I realized if I had made an appointment and traveled all the way there, I would have gone too. I mean, you follow through. That's what you do. We recently moved back to the East Coast, my husband and daughter and I, but for the last 12 years we lived in California. And a friend of ours, we lived in a small town called Claremont, and a friend of ours, a black man, moved to that town. And when he arrived, I thought, oh my God, my neighbors, if he comes to my house, will think he's robbing our house. So I had a dinner party and I invited my neighbors over and invited our new friend. And I had wine and cheese and, all that stuff. And I introduced my friend and I said to my neighbors, I didn't say you are racist, so therefore I have invited you over. I didn't say that. I said, our new friend is in town and I just wanted to introduce him to you, and he'll probably be in and out of our house. And everybody thought that was lovely. And then a few months later, there was a film playing in Pasadena. And my husband and I wanted to go, and our daughter was in school until 3 o'clock, and we went to, I think, the 1 o'clock show, and we wouldn't get back in time, so we asked our friend to pick up our daughter from school, and this happened. You and your partner go to see the film, The House We Live In. You ask a friend to pick up your child from school. On your way home, your phone rings. Your neighbor tells you he is standing at the window watching a menacing black guy casing both your homes. The guy is walking back and forth talking to himself and seems disturbed. You tell your neighbor that your friend whom he has met is babysitting. He says, no, it's not him. He's met your friend, and this isn't that nice young man. Anyway, he wants you to know he's called the police. Your partner calls your friend and asks him if there's a guy walking back and forth in front of your house. Your friend says that if anyone were outside, he would see him because he is standing outside. You hear the sirens through the speakerphone. Your friend is speaking to your neighbor when you arrive home. The 4 police cars are gone. Your neighbor has apologized to your friend and is now apologizing to you. Feeling somewhat responsible for the actions of your neighbor, you clumsily tell your friend that the next time he wants to talk on the phone, he should just go in the backyard. He looks at you a long minute before saying he can speak on the phone wherever he wants. Yes, of course, you say. Yes, of course. So that was me. I said that. And I said it because we were in the car for 45 minutes, and there were 4 police cars in front of our house. And I thought we had brought him to a point that could go any which way. And so by the time, I'm on the phone with my neighbor saying to my neighbor, you have to go outside and tell the police you made a mistake. And our neighbor said to me on the phone, he said, I'm not going out there, they have guns. And so then we called the police station and told them that our neighbor had made a mistake. And so I'm not proud of that moment, but it is one I tell because it shows how you get, in order to accommodate the trauma, you end up doing things you shouldn't do. So it's getting very dark, so I'm going to read a poem and then see what happens after that. And the poem is called What If, and it was written in part in response to the play. What does it mean to want? An age-old call for change, not to change, and yet also to be bullied by the call to change. How is a call to change named shame, named penance, named chastisement? How does one say, what if, without reproach? The root of chastise is to make pure, the possibility of that, the impossibility of that. Is that what repels and not the call for change? There is resignation in my voice when I say I feel myself slowing down, gauging like a machine the levels of my response. I remain within so sore, I think there is no other way than release. So I ask questions like I know how, in the loneliness of my questioning. The stillness is true. There isn't even a tremor when one is this historied out. I could build a container to carry this being, a container to hold all. Though we were never about completeness, we were never to be whole. I stand in your considered thoughts, also broken, also unknown, extending one sentence, here, I am here, as I have known you, as I'll never know you, I am here. Whatever is being expressed, what if I am here, awaiting, waiting for you, in the what if, in the questions, in the conditionals, in the imperatives, what if? Thank you.
So here's the first poem, and I'm trying to set you up. Sometimes these poems are just me trying to define what I am trying to write, and other times they're not. So they're all over the place, even though they all have the same title. But I usually say that's like, George Foreman. He named all 5 of his kids George. All different Georges, though. So even though it sounds like it's the same title, they all are different. So I do have to say them. All right. Okay, here we go. American sonnet for my past and future assassin. The black poet would love to say his century began with Hughes or, God forbid, Wheatley, but actually it began with all the poetry weirdos and worriers and warriors, poetry whiners and winos falling from ship bows, sunset bridges, and windows. In a second, I'll tell you how little writing rescues. My hunch is that Sylvia Plath was not especially fun company. A drama queen, thin-skinned and skittery, she thought her poems were ordinary. What do you call a visionary who does not recognize her vision? Orpheus was alone when he invented writing. His manic drawing became a kind of writing when he sent his beloved a sketch of an eye with an X struck through it. He meant, I am blind without you. She thought he meant, I never want to see you again. It is possible he meant that too. Don't clap. We're just gonna roll right on through. American sonnet for my past and future assassin. I'm not sure how to hold my face when I dance. In an expression of determination or euphoria. And how should I look at my partner? In her eyes or at her body? Should I mirror the rhythm of her hips or should I take the lead? I hear Jimi Hendrix was also unsure in dance, despite being beautiful and especially attuned. Most black people know this about him. He understood the rhythm of a Delta farmer on guitar in a juke joint circa 1933, as well as the rhythm of your standard bohemian on guitar in a New York apartment amid daydreams of jumping through windows, ballads of footwork, monk orchestra, miles with strings, whatever. I'm just saying I don't know how to hold myself when I dance. Do you? American Sonnet for my past and future assassin. 7 of the 10 things I love in the face of James Baldwin concern the spiritual elasticity of his expressions. The sachet between left and right eyebrow, for example. The crease between his eyes like a tuning fork or furrow, like a riverbed branching into tributaries like lines of rapturous sentences searching for a period. The dimple in his chin narrows and expands like a pupil. Most of all, I love all of his eyes. And those wrinkles, the feel and color of wet driftwood in the mud around those eyes. Mud is made of simple rain and earth, the same baptismal hills and spills of dirt James Baldwin is made of. It's a scary time. Like if you think that like so much of what, I don't do any social media stuff, like anti-social media stuff, but like the performance of one's apology in that space is very randomly accepted. So like when I have a line like, you know, the deeper the wound, the more heroic the healing, like I am thinking about, like that just means when someone really hurts you, you are heroic if you can get over it. It doesn't mean you have to get over it. If you don't get over it, think about hurt, existential, racial, however you want to think about it. So if you can get over it, that is always a heroic gesture. And if you cannot, it's just ordinary. So there's nothing wrong with saying, you know, I do not forgive you. But that's my thinking on it. So this poem is sort of getting like that. Like what is, you know, if you don't give people, it's like what Ruby Sales says, a path to redemption, what do they become? So, and then finally, like it was just a scene, I dug it up to make sure I had it right. I had it wrong. So I think this is all mine then. It wasn't 10 minutes. This thing, in my mind, it was 10 minutes of this guy apologizing to the camera. It was more like maybe 3 minutes. So that's it. I'm gonna leave it as it is though. I think you'll see why. Okay. As if because a sort of appomattox of outpourage and recurrences wherein the enviable surrender is insufficient, the humanist of white men, which is to say the way in which all white men are human, one may reasonably be appreciative of power's relationship to freedom and thereby reluctant to relinquish it. I get it. Does that make sense? Like if you gave up, especially if you were in an environment where no one was going to forgive you and you happen to be in power, that's just not great incentive for giving up power. Like when I give it up, what you gonna do? Like put me in jail? Trump. Okay. So I get it why you wouldn't want to give it up. I'm sorry, I've screwed my whole sign it up. Once I watched a mustached, pinstriped, middle-aged white man declare sincerely for 10 minutes straight into a camera running behind a 1- or 2-way window, "People, I'm sorry. Listen, I mean it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm very, very sorry. I'm so very sorry. Please forgive me. I'm so, so sorry. Please, I am so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." And so on and so forth. What frightened me most was we might never be ready to forgive him. All right, so this is the last poem. That's a scary thing, though. Like, you want to be able to forgive him, hence the thing that I said before. All right, I'm gonna stop here. I don't know how long I've been reading. I hope it wasn't 20 minutes. Keep going? Oh. I like to keep it sweet and short. Well, I can't put any profanity in it, so that cuts out a lot of my poems, y'all. Like, there's kids here, and I saw some of the kids, and I was like, okay, that means I'm not gonna read those poems. But I guess I skipped some out of the book. Let me see, I'll read like 3 more. Here's one, just because it was sort of coded in the earlier poem about the Time Lord thing. I mean, if you thought, like, he can't be talking about Doctor Who. American Sonnet for My Past and Future Assassin. So now we're back to the book. In a parallel world where all Doctor Whos are black, I'm the doctor who knows no God is more powerful than time. In a parallel world where all the doctors who are black see cops box black boys in cop cars and caskets, I'm the doctor who blacks out whenever he sees a police box. In a parallel world where doctors who box cops in caskets cry doing their jobs, I disappear inside a skull that's larger on the inside. Question: if in a parallel world where every Doctor Who was black, you were the complex Time Lord, when and where would you explore? My answer is, a brother has to know how to time travel and doctor himself when a knee or shoe stalls against his neck. American Sonnet for My Past and Future Assassin. Suppose you could speak nothing but money and acrimony. Suppose all the sunflowers Van Gogh destroyed, all the stones in Virginia's pockets and all the stones Georgia painted as vaginas were simply a matter of making something greater than money. Prince taught us a real man has a beautiful woman in him. Suppose we cannot forget what happened in money. Suppose you are someone who celebrates Thomas Jefferson's birthday. Suppose he was someone whose love for a black woman was blinded by blackness, hers and his, yours and mine. I ain't mad at you, assassin. It's not the bad people who are brave I fear. It's the good people who are afraid. All right, this is the last one. So, I've been trying to stop. So through 2018, I was trying to, and something happened, like the stock market took a huge dip in December. Y'all probably remember that now. So when that happened, I was like, oh, he's definitely out of it now. He's messing with people's money. I was so excited that I wrote this sonnet. I sent it to the New Yorker. They put it in there in January. And here we are, still. So it's a little bit reflective, but also a little bit hopeful. So yeah, I had imagined it. So it was American Sonnet for the New Year. That's what it was called. Things got terribly ugly incredibly quickly. Things got ugly embarrassingly quickly, actually. Things got ugly unbelievably quickly, honestly. Things got ugly seemingly infrequently, initially. Things got ugly ironically, usually, awfully carefully. Things got ugly unsuccessfully, occasionally. Things got ugly mostly painstakingly, quietly, seemingly. Things got ugly beautifully, infrequently. Things got ugly sadly, especially frequently, unfortunately. Things got ugly increasingly, obviously. Things got ugly suddenly, embarrassingly, forcefully. Things got really ugly regularly, truly, quickly. Things got really incredibly ugly. Things will get less ugly, inevitably, hopefully. Thank y'all.
So I wanted to write this poem about my favorite Indian sweet, and it's called Gulab Jamun Jar. I love saying the name, Gulab Jamun. Like each sweet syllable seems like there ought to be a crush of sugar on your tongue, a tiny reward just for saying the word. These soft milk balls, fried golden and soaked in sugar syrup, are glassed up in a luxuriously oversized jar that my grandmother collects under her spice table to store homemade mango and spicy lime pickles. But for Uncle Jacob, these jars serve as seasonal aquariums. When I asked him where the fish in the gulab jamun jar, now sitting in the center of his dining table, came from, he said, "After rain, these fish appear in road puddles." Uncle asked a boy to catch them in a towel, a present for my aunt. These fish are small, about 2 inches long, a black teardrop shape behind each eye, and again, if you didn't catch it the first time, on the tail. Odd because they don't have the traditional fish shape where the body tapers into a kissy mouth and ends into a swish of tail. It's more like little silver rectangles suspended in the jar. Uncle said when the puddles dry up in the sun, the fish aren't there to crack and split their smooth milk skins. He's never yet seen one dead in the street, like the fish knew they had to move to a new wet place. Perhaps they were snatched up by a dog or pecked to bits by a rooster. All over the village, wet dogs and wet chickens roam the moss-covered alleys. Nobody knows who cares for these animals, but all of them have a crafty gleam in their eye that says, "Yes, I ate even more than you today." On the table, these fish watch me watch them eat rice, the only food my aunt gives them. I see the rice fluff in their bellies swelling. I tap the jar with a fork, and the only response is a slight shift in their togetherness, a white square of silk thrown into a small sea. When I first went to India and visited my grandmother in Kerala, I became fascinated with Kathakali dancers. And those of you who know, these dancers, some of them, they wear very kind of garish face paint. Most notably, there's one dancer, it's a whole drama. And I'm not a dancer, I wish I was. But one of the dancers wears bright green face paint. There's red, there's white, but I always loved the green-faced ones. And I would always have like either magazines or stuff with featuring my favorite Kathakali dancers, and I'd hide them when my friends came over because I didn't want them to see. I didn't want to have to explain anything. And you know what? I think, things are, I'm so happy that my sons, I have 2 little sons, who are so happy to embrace even though they're a quarter Indian and a quarter Filipino, they love embracing my parents' heritage. And that's my greatest gift, is that they've never been embarrassed the way I was before. So hopefully this is one of my poems to help rectify that. And this is called In Praise of My Manicure. Because I was taught all my life to blend in, I want my fingernails to blend out. Like preschoolers who stomp their rain boots in a parking lot, like coins who wink at you from the scatter bottom of a fountain, like red starfish who wiggle a finger dance at you, like green-faced Kathakali dancers who shape their hands into a bit of a hello with an Anjali. I tell you, from now on, me and my children and their children will hold 4 fingers up, a palavam, a fresh sprout with no more shame, no more shrink. And if the bright colors and glittered stars of my fingernails scare you, I will shape my hands into a sarparisasu, my favorite, the snake. Watch how it slides down my wrist and into each finger. See my nails, look at them. They're so fabulous, so marvelous. Say the 2 snakes where my brown arms once were. See that movement near my elbow, now at my wrist? Did you know a snake heart can slide up and down its body when it needs to? But you'll never be able to catch my pulse. You'll never be able to catch my shine. I'm just gonna read 2 more. This is the poem that the title, Oceanic, my latest book, came from. And this is dedicated to the writers of poetry in here, the students in here. I think this is a strange time for us all in this country for many reasons, but I think in particular, especially for writers of color in particular, there are people who would rather people of color be afraid or distrusting or angry. And those emotions are all good and valid. But I think one of the things we could do to push back against that is to fight for what we love and to fight and kind of celebrate beauty and what we love in this world. And so I want to dedicate this to anybody who's struggling to make an art or who's just trying to find beauty in this world. There are some days that it's very hard to do that than others. But there's always something. And this is called Invitation. Come in, the water is fine. You can't get lost here. Even if you wanted to hide behind a clutch of spiny oysters, I'll find you. If you ever leave me by night, by boat, you'll see the arrangement of golden sun stars and a sea of milk, and though it's tempting to visit them, stay. I've been trained to look up and up all my life, no matter the rumble on earth, but I've learned it's okay to glance down once in a while into the sea. So many lessons bubble up if you just know where to look. Clouds of plankton hurricaning in open whale mouths will send you west, and chewy urchins can slide you east. Even squid know how to be rich with 10 empty arms. There are humans who don't know the feel of a good bite or embrace at least once a day. And underneath you, narwhals spin upside down while their singular tooth needles you like a compass pointed towards home. Deep where imperial volutes and hatchetfish live, colors humans have not even named yet glow in caves made from black coral and clamshell. Just yesterday, a giant squid finally let itself be captured in a photograph, and the paper nautilus ripple flashes scarlet and 2 kinds of violet when it silvers you near. Who knows what'll happen next? If you still want to look up, I hope you see the dark sky as oceanic, boundless, limitless, like all the shades of blue in a glacier. Let's listen, let's really listen how this planet hums with so much wing, so much fur, and so much fin. And this last one I'm going to read in honor of it being an Indian Heritage Day and the delicious food that we've been having. I was doing some research on kind of the history of pepper, which originated in India, and actually wars were fought over this little spice, little but powerful spice. And I won't bore you because this is like facts that I'm like the worst dinner party guest. When someone asks me about pepper, I will go on and on and on about it. But I will say that all spices are broken down into 3 categories, just for your little bit of trivia. It's coloring, fragrance, and heat. So this last poem is broken into 3 stanzas based on coloring, fragrance, and heat. And I wish there was a better title for this, but I just simply named it Spices. Coloring. If your man doesn't know cumin from cardamom, man, it's time to let him go. But if he discovers a wetted paintbrush dipped into turmeric makes a soft yellow line on your back and spells something like "You are my son," then keep him, girl, and hold on tight. I like a cupboard packed with jam jars rubbed clean, full of the sand of fantasy beaches of me and my man and a paintbrush I conjured up just last night. A cupboard where the difference in reds means danger or victory for my pot of stew. Fragrance. And what about cloves pierced into a fat orange, strung up with ribbon at Christmas? Who came up with that? And what kind of twisted need do they have for the occasional prick of spikes under nails? Once, when we were leaving the restaurant called Bombay Palace, my father spooned caraway and licorice bits into my palm from the jade bowl and said, "This will clean your breath." The owner just looked at us, twitched his mustache, and nodded. Heat. Pepper is the obvious choice. In its powder form, I mean. But there's something about the crush of peppercorns into salad over pasta, the twist and flex of wrist that sends men back for more. But if you really want to impress, try chili flaked fresh under a rolling pin and wax paper. Make sure he sees you doing this labor of love. Act as if you do this at every meal, that this is how it would be if his heart desired. And after dinner, float some in his tea, slip some into a slice of cake. But be careful for the warmth of his mouth. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
So I'm going to read some poems from Afterland, and I will also read a couple of new poems as well from a new collection that I have forthcoming. And I just want to thank you all for being here, and thank the amazing team here at Sunken Garden for the invitation to be here at Blue Flower Arts, and my fellow reader, Chris. Thank you. So this first poem I want to read is about finding home, wherever that is, whether it is in this existence or another plane of existence. Toward home. Say a rooster is my mother. Say there is a coffin in its body that can only fit my skull. Say I find a lighthouse burning in a cave, smoke above the field of broken feathers. I'm flightless, slipping windward without a bridge to home. Say the oven is a bone room. Say the rock bleeds out its spoiling eye. I don't know where I'm from, but say my feet endure because I must have come from somewhere. Say the oryx is a creature made of windows. I look inside its ear and I see its spirit. 1,000 needles thread the ends of my hair, and I'm trembling in this storm. So earlier I talked a little bit about the secret war, the Hmong displacement of Laos, and I just want to share a little bit more because I know that not everyone knows who the Hmong people are, or how and why and what conditions led them to become refugees here in the States. So if you've heard about the secret war, could you just raise your hand just so I can get a sense? Okay, there's a good number of folks who know. So the war, the secret war, was happening at the time that the Vietnam War was also happening, and these two wars were happening side by side, but the secret war was happening in Laos. And what happened is that the CIA went into Laos and recruited Hmong soldiers, many of whom were, my uncles, my grandfathers, and they recruited these men to fight communism on behalf of the United States. And many of them did, and many of them died at astounding rate in comparison to their American counterparts. And when the war ended in 1975, what happened to all of these people was that they were left behind, essentially, and there was no infrastructure in place to even think about the possibility of Hmong resettlement, but there was no country either for Hmong people to go back to after this war had decimated the mountains and the villages and the hillsides. And so what really happened in that war was that the CIA and the U.S. government it was almost as if it was a proxy war, in all reality. It was a war in which the U.S. could go in and use these Hmong bodies to fight this war on their behalf, and then walk away when the war was done. And those are the parts about that war that haunt me, is the aspect, the proxy war aspect of it, the fact that if we could get these Hmong bodies to do our war bidding for us, then we would need to put our own men on that ground. And so there's a lot more to it, but this next poem I want to read is a poem to a soldier, a Hmong soldier in that war. Dear soldier of the secret war, Laos, 1975. You once felt the American hand that blew its breath to drive the fire. Now they've ended the war, the American has gone home. Your Hmong village is a graveyard. Do you think of your missing wife? How the Pathet Lao dragged her naked, screaming and bleeding by her long black hair deep into forest shadows. Or your son's head in the rice pounder shell crumbled, and your brother, the youngest who followed you into combat. It was scalpel that day. They captured you both. They sliced off and boiled his tongue, forced it down your throat. Do you think of the American returning to the coffee cup, new linens in a warm bed, pulling into the driveway? Sorry about your mountains, they say. Here is the last of the ammunition, a few cases of grenades. Do you picture him reading the morning paper, turning on the nightly news? Maybe you clench your rifle closer, sling your elegies to your back, hold them as a newborn baby. You will wait for hours in ragged fatigues with others abandoned, swarming the dirt runway, shoving toward the locked aircraft door among the scattered shoes, shirts, blouses, suitcases thrown out. What grief song erupts when you see the last American plane take off, distant above Lungkyang? How loud do you beg in your gut, pleading to some invented god or ancestor or politician, all of our thousands who died on your side, why won't you authorize another plane? Okay. Great. So I live in California, and one of the sort of treasures of California that I love, or just even being on the Pacific coast, is the redwoods. You know, if you've read, the redwoods are just amazing, and they're these massive, massive giants, right? And I feel like they know things. They've lived so long. They must have accumulated all this wisdom in all their centuries of existence. And so when I was thinking about yellow rain, and I was thinking, what is this substance? I happened to actually be up in the Northern California area, and so I was meditating with the redwoods and asking, and I just wanted to invite the redwoods' knowledge of what it could tell me about what yellow rain was. And so this poem is for that redwood, those redwoods who have some deep knowing about the mysteries of this earth, and I hope that just being in its presence, I could feel like I knew something, like it was telling me something about yellow rain. Prayer to the redwood. Senescent and dwelled in your tower with sorrel for shoes, I come to you fleshed with intention. A muted engine dismantled at your coastal throne, in doubt and daring intuit from you. Tell me if you've heard of the Apis dorsata, and I will affirm what I know of its innocence. Take this confession to your wildlife, mahogany limbs grasping the upper avenues of your genius memory. As readily there, a nursery for hemlock and new firs. How would you have guarded your pine? These sudden flecks, you would have known its taste as factory-born, far from organic consent. You would have deemed its false footprint here in your globe's fluent echo. You exhaled the words, stockpile, degrade, human subjects. I make sentient my palm over your bark of suede, dense as it were to defy a passing inferno. stockpile, degrade human subjects. No secret must ever be singed of your knowing. And then to close tonight, I track the moon cycles. Does anyone here track moon cycles? Yeah. Okay. So and also in the Hmong culture, we didn't, at the most basic sort of primal level, time did not exist for Hmong people in the way that we think of it now by hours, seconds, and minutes. But time was actually sort of thought through as moon cycles, harvests, and seasons. So moon cycles are very much a part of the way that I think about time. And tonight is the night of the new moon, right? We have a new moon tonight. And what does that mean? It means that we should use it as an opportunity to invite into our lives all of the things that we want that will serve and benefit our most highest and benevolent selves, right? So set your intentions tonight. And so this is a poem to remind you of that, to encourage you to sort of own your existence and to set those intentions for whatever it is that your heart desires. Look to the new moon. If you must hear the story of my turbulent gaze after waking, the march of my hours to hermit into a higher body, it is that whatever you put into the universe eventually returns. In our oneness of gift, we are eyes together, nerves together, affected together. If I've never told you how madly we share in the stars, how it was all founded for you, then let the longing for Arcturus be the gilding of our sleep. I know when your time was in its making, I was left to sing alone, unfed, to trample through 100 layers of night without a heart to hold my guard. If I had known all those days to listen deep into myself so that you would begin to hear me, I'd sooner soak the decibels of your cells into the exhale of my embrace. A scorning within is within coming back to scorn. A rose quartz promise lifted into the world is the world coming back to surrender its love. Even after I took my breath into a vineyard of hawks, I could not break myself from caring, but only to seek you, find you, whisper into your palm, you are not lost, you won't be lost. Thank you so much.
So I want to share a few poems with you. You are the first audience to hear almost all of these. And I thank you in advance for being a wonderful audience for these brand new spanking poems. And I want to start with this poem because Ava was up here earlier and she did a poem about Eve. And I think in a garden like this one, what a better setting to talk about not Eve, but Adam's first wife, Lilith, who was thrown out of the garden for not following the rules. I am a wife as of a year and a half ago, and I am not a traditional wife, and this poem came a day that I was mad at my husband. Self-portrait as Lilith. Some days you seem so disappointed, love, but you knew what it was. I am your dread wife. You will not throw me out of Eden. I show myself the door. Oh, to receive the praise of a man simply for simplicity. There is no snake. I plant the apple tree. I pluck the apple. I bite the pomegranate, the passion fruit, whatever the fuck. I am a feast unto myself. In this wilderness, the feral things name me. And I was raised a girl who would one day wash her husband's feet at night. And then you, The things I had to do, of course I malted, made a woman who unmakes home. If I was to be whittled down, at least I would be piercing. Beloved, I could not only writhe when coming, there are little deaths in the going too, and no, I cannot return to your little garden. It's that you keep joining me in this gnashing jaw of wind, and if so, what should we call us? How is it you are still here, that I am, of course, then why the cry? Of course, I must draw blood. My extended family is a complicated thing. My mom is one of 15 children. She was the first person in our family on her side to come to this country. She brought all of her siblings and her parents. I have about 64 first cousins. They all live in the Bronx. It's amazing. My father's family is one that is somewhat disjointed. I did not grow up with a relationship on my father's side. He was abandoned before he was born. And there are stories that I've had to learn piecemeal from my father because he is not a person to talk about where he's from. And so little bit by little bit, I've had to cobble together a history of that side of who we are over there. This poem is called The Accordion Player's Granddaughter. It was 1948 in rural Hispaniola. Merengue típico was not gracing ballrooms. When I imagine an accordionist, I think of an old white man on TV playing polka, or that one episode of Family Matters, not Dominican merenguero, or the slow grind of a sound that dips your pelvis, pulls your body back up with a quick wind, the face of the instrument opening on a slow breath. My father's father couldn't not be a somebody. Told my grandmother he would return, one last tour before the baby is born. My father's father did not know he was having a boy. The only memory my father has of his. 11 years old, in the back of a dark establishment, an uncle took him to see a band. The man under the light squeezed the bellows shut, and could this not be unlike the breath my father must have taken in that moment? A collapse, an intentional swelling under the hands. I like to imagine that the sticky rum on the floor was not the only reason my father was frozen in place, that my father's father knew to look up, knew his blood was alive and young in the room. My father's father, did his fingers falter? I cannot say my father's father's name. I do not know if ever I've known it. Reporters ask my origins for becoming a barrio griot, and I talk of storytellers in my matrilineal line. Today is my 40th tour stop in 3 months. I tell my husband I miss him. He doesn't ask why it is I keep on leaving, why I still have not removed my IUD. The point is the blood, the lung of all of this expanding. I write a lot about food, and one of my favorite things to eat is plantains. And so this is a ode to plantains, or my mother is the first one in her family to leave the Dominican Republic for the United States. And as an early lesson, she teaches me how to tell the ripeness, using my hands to press for firmness, reading the black spots for sweetness, letting the smooth green leather call to me breakfast or lunch or dinner. She tells me to cut the waxy skin down the thick line on the side. This is the easiest way to peel and expose. She shows me how high to turn the heat and the concentric circles of oil bubbles needed. A welcoming. Cut diagonal discs, drop them into the pan. This is the most difficult part, watching diligently as the pale turns gold. When the plantain is golden, a sun removed from the heat and flattened. A wooden Tostonera is ideal. The bottom heavy glass will do. Drop back into the oil. This is what makes it special. The twice fried of it. the double baptism in fire, the risk of yourself burning as the oil geysers. There is nothing without sacrifice. Sprinkle with salt, serve on a plate, feed a household, feed a family, from Pilon to Fogong. Feed a nation. Let it follow you across the Atlantic. Bag and turn it into chips for the corner bodega. Make every day feel like Christmas. Use the whole plantain, the hoja, the eel, the peel, the flesh. What other thing is a gift in its entirety? Do not let people say this is like a potato. Do not let them call it a banana. Do not let them say this is for the poor. Remind them this is for the poor. When other kids call you a plátano in the face, smile like the shape of it. Let it singe your tongue. Praise to the fact that you are always in season, how you are transported and healed despite the bruises everywhere. Let it out. And so for all the educators in the room, I just want to offer this piece. When the girl at the detention center asks you again, why we gotta write these damn poems anyway? Fold back the army knife of your tongue. This is not a place to create more bruises. Teaching creative writing is like convincing skin to graft itself after being wounded. You cannot teach and harm. They must be mutually exclusive. Remember, these are black and brown girls in America. There is hurt here, inherited or otherwise, and trauma is a tapeworm growing in the gut until it gets so big you have to reach into your throat and pull it out from between your smile. Remember, teaching is not community service. Remember, teaching is not an automatic pass to calling yourself an activist. Remember, you are not here to save lives. We are all just working on our own mosaic of aches. So when the girl at the detention asks you again, why we gotta write these damn poems anyways, tell her we write to remind ourselves we are still here and that we can still heal. Thank you all.